Awesome. Hey guys, I'm Barb and welcome to episode 7 of Creators Campfire. If you're new here, then this is a live stream podcast where I interview all sorts of creative people, so entrepreneurs, content creators, side hustlers, and general aspiring talent to find out more about what they do, why they do it, and how they do it. For those joining us live, we'll be taking questions throughout, so if you do have anything you want to ask tonight's guest, please just pop them in the comments, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll pick them up as we go. So without further ado, tonight's guest is a life coach for teachers, and I'm very excited. Guys, please welcome Michelle Weeks. Hey.
Morning or evening, everyone.
Yeah, I suppose we should start there. So it's morning for you. It's 7 a.m. because you're over in New Zealand.
That's correct. Yes, it's very early in the morning over here.
Yeah, it still throws me because even over the last few days, I've been thinking about it. And I've kind of been going, they're ahead. I'm going to bed. They're waking up. This is confusing. I'm like, what? They're in the next day.
Oh my gosh. I'm living in the future, Barb. I'm living in the future.
Tell me what it's like.
It's great. It's great.
Excellent. Something to look forward to. Okay. I'm going to play around with this. Why not? All right, guys, if people are watching, let me know if you prefer this layout or the other one. I'm still experimenting, but let's go with this. It's Michelle's preference. So let's do that. All right, let's get into it. So you are both a teacher and a life coach for teachers, which sounds like a lot. So if we start with the teaching element, how did you get into that? And did you always know you wanted to be a teacher?
Yes, I am one of those people that from a very young age knew that I wanted to be a teacher and didn't really ever imagine doing anything else. So I studied, I'm actually from Sydney, and studied at home in Sydney and worked for the first couple of years in Sydney, and then have worked sort of all over the world and now in New Zealand as well. So a born and bred teacher, I guess.
Yes, that's weird. So like, okay, this is really bad. But growing up, when people want to be like a footballer or a doctor or, you know, something like, you can imagine the little kids playing like, this is what I want to be. Were you one of those people that was just teaching others?
I do remember, like, I would pick up mum's shampoo and like read all the backing on it as if I was teaching a nice little class. So I think that might have actually been that person.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay, so you've just mentioned that all over the world. So have you actually been? So I knew you grew up in Australia and you've moved to New Zealand, but there are other places where you've been and worked and been a teacher.
Yeah. So a little bit of a crazy story, but my husband plays professional basketball. So as a result of that, we've kind of moved with his contracts around the world. So spent a little bit of time in Germany for a while, which was awesome. And then all around Australia and New Zealand. So it's been probably 6 years now of moving every couple of months. So definitely a lot of learning curves in that. Yeah,
that's quite cool. So actually, if you taught in a lot of different places, is the education system or the way so obviously the education system might be quite different in terms of how it goes, but is the way that things are taught really different then? Or is there a lot of similarities?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, I guess, on where you are. So in Germany, I taught in an international school there. So they run the international baccalaureate or the primary years program. So that is a very different way of teaching to what I was used to at home in Australia, where it wasn't actually nationalised at the time, but now they have moved into a national curriculum. But New South Wales, where I'm from, didn't quite partake in the nationalised curriculum. So, I would say it is quite different. I mean, the basics of teaching are the same. You know, for me, it's all about connection and making sure that the children feel really supported and that I can have that learning journey with them. And so from that point of view, that is all the same, but the content, can be quite different. And some of the systems and the way that they're taught can be quite different as well.
Okay, I suppose actually we've jumped a step. So you are specifically a teacher for primary school. So you are kind of teaching kids around 5 to 10-ish?
Yeah, 5 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you always knew you wanted to be a teacher, did you always know you wanted to teach kids, or was it just actually I'm not quite sure and I'll figure it out later?
I always knew primary school. I think I had a high school job that was like in an after school care kind of scenario. So from that kind of moved on. I knew that I didn't want to do high school kids. I'm not cut out for high school kids. So primary school was the next thing. I did like the younger ones, the like sort of daycare age, but working in a daycare just wasn't what I was after in terms of like the environment and those sorts of things. So primary school it was.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so before we move on just a little bit, in terms of, and I guess this probably is quite similar around the world, in terms of actually becoming a teacher, I guess there's a standard kind of go to uni and then have to do a teaching course to get qualified and jump through several hoops, I assume.
Yeah. So obviously the university degree, as part of the university degree, there's a whole heap of practicum. So you go into classrooms as a student teacher and you teach for a certain amount of time. That's different for each university. But as soon as you have finished your degree, then you come out as a fully fledged teacher. So you are thrown into a classroom that first year. And often there are quite good mentors and support systems in schools these days. But yeah, it can be quite daunting because you're in a classroom with all these children and you don't, you kind of are looking at yourself going, what? They've trusted me with all this? But you slowly learn what works for you and what works for the children. And luckily, if you have a good team around you, you can ask lots of questions and learn along the way as well.
Yeah, I'm going to mess with this because it's throwing me. So I'm going to have to go back to this. Is this okay? I'm just used to it. I know that's really bad. Okay, so you've come out and you've gone, okay, I've done my qualifications. I know I can be a teacher. I'm now in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I've kind of... let me rephrase that. So you've come out and there are certain things you've obviously been taught about being a teacher, but are there things that you think should have been taught or you wish you were aware of going into the actual world of teaching? So the practical side of teaching versus the more theoretical side of teaching.
Yes. I guess there's lots of aspects to that. There's obviously the daily interactions of how how to actually implement things like behavior strategies and how to connect with families and how to build and nurture those relationships that you have with the children in your class. And that's something that is learned over time because it can't really be taught in university, even though you kind of wish it was. There's that side of it, but then there's also the side of it that looks at things like your accreditation, which I found really difficult in my first year of teaching. It's basically gathering a whole lot of information and proving, and it's done differently all over the place, but where I was, you had to kind of prove that you were teaching and satisfying all the different teaching standards. And that was something that was huge for me because it was just a whole lot of extra hours on top of already trying to get through the days. And then the last one is probably just how to really balance teaching and your life. And that's something that I luckily now teach in my life coaching business, but that's not taught in university. And it's something that I believe in really strongly, and I don't think that teachers are given enough information about how to do that and how to care for themselves so they're not burning out, so that they're not, falling out of the career within 5 years' time, because that is the huge statistic in the teaching industry, is the amount of teachers that actually leave the industry before 5 years is something of a crazy, like a mind-blowing percentage. So really just how do we look after ourselves within an environment that is really full on, and that can take up a lot of your own energy, and how can we do that but care for ourselves first as humans, and then be able to for that to flow on into our classroom and into our for their families as well.
No, that's a big thing. So obviously this is something you went through firsthand, and is a reason for embarking on the journey you have embarked on. So can you give us an idea about the sort of stuff that was going through your mind at this point in time then, and what you were going through, and kind of the thoughts and the feelings that you had?
Totally. So I experienced one pretty big burnout. And I think what I had done is set my expectations of myself so incredibly high that I was never, ever, ever going to stop or give myself any compassion if I didn't hit them. And so I was just pushing through all the different signs that I needed to rest, that I needed some time away, that I needed some balance. And so I eventually actually just got really sick. And I had about 3 to 4 weeks where I was just lying on the couch, completely exhausted, couldn't move. And at that point, I sort of realized that I had skipped over all of the warning signs of being tired coming home, of having, thoughts like this shouldn't be so hard, or, I guess eating not so healthily, not exercising because I was always too tired to do so. And all of that just compounded into this one moment, and I was lying on the couch thinking, I didn't do that very well. It's definitely not my finest moment.
That sounds really
and I
scary.
knew, I kind of knew at that point in time that something needed to change, and change needed to take place in order for me to have a sustainable career in teaching. Because I couldn't keep doing that every single year. My poor family and my hubby at the time, I was just a shadow of myself. So they were like, something needs to change. So that's how it that was the very start of the process.
So just on that, so I read that you said that it was almost normalised. So when you'd speak to others, it was just how it was done. If you wanted to be a teacher, this is kind of how you needed to work, and it was the norm. Is that true? Is that kind of how it's?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, that's just my opinion. There's many different schools and many different ways of doing things. So in some of the systems that I was in, that was normalized. So it was just this thought process of, of course you're going to be exhausted and overwhelmed by the end of the term. Like, that's just how it is. And I was like, surely there's a better way of what we're doing. Surely there's a way that we can kind of do both. We can give these children an amazing education, but we could also make sure that we're looking after ourselves as people, because surely the connection between those two is really important, because if we're not healthy, and if we're not having good thoughts, and if we're not looking after ourselves, we can't do that for the children as much as we would want to. So I definitely think it can be normalized, and that's something that I work with all my clients about, is actually you don't have to buy into the feel of the staff room. You don't have to buy into the mood of what's going on, or the negative comments, or all of those sorts of things. You can actually choose your own path forward. You can choose how your day wants to feel. You can choose what you're going to implement so that you can be your best self, rather than kind of being swept up in that whirlwind of what's expected or what's going around in the staff room.
Yeah, and what is it, do you think, specifically, if there is something specific, it might be just a kind of accumulation of things, but what is it, do you think, that leads to that you come home absolutely exhausted, seemingly doing a 9 to 5? We all know that teaching is not, a 9 to 5.
Definitely not.
And you bring your work home, and it's not quite as clear cut as that. But is it just the fact that work follows you home, or do you think there's something else there?
I think that there's a few different levels to that. There's obviously the practical level of physically teaching children all day, and that is something that is exhausting in itself. You know, you are talking a lot of the day. You are constantly, you know, like making sure that everyone's okay. You know that this kid's over there and that kid's over there, and you know you're just always aware of what's going on, which is exhausting in itself as well. You then obviously have the children who want to need your attention, so you're wanting to give that to them. So there's that kind of side of things. Then there's the side of the work and kind of the administration side. So that definitely builds up, and I think you can talk to any older teacher that says that that has just skyrocketed over the last 20 years. So a lot of teachers do feel like they have to get there before school. You know, in my first year of teaching, I was at school at sort of 5:20 in the morning so that I could get 2 hours of silent work without anyone bugging me before I even started my teaching day at 7:30. And that would go through till sort of 4:30. And then I'd usually take something home and do until 6. So, you know, again, that was not a realistic way of approaching things. And I learned that quickly. But, you know, I think there's almost this need to feel like you have to get everything done. And yes, there's time limits and, you know, there's expectations, but teachers often want to do things above and beyond. And that leads to taking a lot of work home. That leads to this feeling of almost guilt when we're not working, because you just feel like you should be working all the time. And if you're not working, then, oh gosh, I'm not going to be as good as, you know, like Kelly in room B, because she's going to be doing work today. So I need to be, you know, and that builds that exhaustion and that, just overall feeling of, burnout and overwhelm.
Yeah, I guess you're literally switched on all the time. There's no...
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, that can't be fun. At least in the office, you can, you know, go and have 20 minutes of just, I'm going for a coffee or I need a break.
Of that.
No. Wow. Okay, so how long were you teaching before A, the burnout, and B, you then realised that this is something that actually you can help others with, and what's kind of the thought process between having that burnout and then actually thinking I can do something here?
So that big burnout that I had was after 4 years of teaching. So had I walked away, I would have very much been in that percentage of people that walked away before the 5-year mark. What I did, and I think it was probably good timing, more than anything, but my husband and I actually then started to travel after that. So luckily I knew that something needed to change, but physically my environment was changing anyway. And so I took the time to, at that point, go, okay, I can understand that change needs to happen, but now I'm going to figure out what that looks like for me and how I'm going to implement that going forward. So yeah, I've now been teaching for 9 years, and at the start of it, after that 4-year journey, that 4-year burnout, I went on a little bit of a personal development journey over a couple of years, and really just worked out, okay, why do I want to be a teacher? How do I want teaching to feel? What do I need in terms of my own life? Like, what do I need to actually implement boundary-wise so that I can be a good person in the classroom and I can give everything that I want to give within those boundaries? So yeah, that was quite a long time ago. And then, life coaching started about a year and a half ago. So kind of once I gathered all that information, I then went, you know what, there's other people that need to know this too. And I feel like I can help and I want to give back. And that's where the idea kind of started from.
So, okay, so this is one thing that sprung to mind for me was you've obviously, so teaching we know is a full-time job as it is, right? It's already taking a lot of your time. And then obviously, it's amazing that you want to share this with other people, but how do you kind of convince yourself that you have time to take on this extra like workload, almost extra job, and kind of give back in that way. I'm guessing it's working out kind of, you know, this journey you've been on, you can manage it. But
well, it's a good question. I couldn't do it if I was working full time. And that was one of the boundaries that I managed to put in place. I do know a couple of teachers who do have similar side hustles, that they do work full time and they do it and they run their side hustle on the side. But for me, I knew that I wouldn't be able to juggle both in a full time sense and be able to do well at both of them. So I put some boundaries in place. And so I work on my business 3 days a week, and then I'm available for relief teaching 3 days a week. So that was my, once I actually started to earn a little bit from my business, and for that to be something that I really wanted to focus on, at that point I said to myself, well, actually, how is that going to look, and what boundaries do I need to put in place for that to be something that is achievable? So so now I have 3 days on my business and 3 days teaching a week. So
and still have a rest.
That's the balance. And still have a rest day, yes, of course. I mean, I don't always get called in for all of those 3 release days. So, there could be an extra day in there as well.
Yeah, okay, no, that kind of makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I kind of thought you had a time turner or something. I was like, this is amazing.
No, absolutely not.
Do you prefer one or the other, or actually do you just enjoy them both the same, but just in a different sense?
It's funny because people will often say to me, oh, like, what's your next goal for your business? What's your next goal for your business? And I want my business, I have goals obviously in my business, but for me, one of my goals has never been to go full time in my business. It has always been to allow me to share everything that I have and to support teachers in a way that I know they need to be supported. But also allowing me to still teach, because I get so much joy out of teaching. I genuinely love teaching. And so that was never something that I wanted to give up completely, but I kind of almost wanted to get to the point that I could do it on my terms. That might sound a little bit selfish, but it was kind of, I want to be able to teach so that I can get that joy, so that I can share those moments with the children, so that I can be in schools and converse with teachers and be in that environment. But for that not to be something that I feel like I have to do, and I have to be a certain way, and I have to it was actually my business is allowing me to do the things at a higher level, I guess, that I feel are really important for the teaching profession. And then the teaching is something that I get so much joy out of that I can do on a daily basis as well. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. It's a good plan.
Thank you.
In terms of, where was I going with that? Totally throwing myself. Where was it going? Great, mind blank. I had it. Give me a second. This is so you're working 3 days. And that was one of the boundaries you set specifically for your business. But in terms of the journey that you'd gone on and understanding more about A, the burnout, and B, kind of on your own personal development journey, without giving too much away, obviously, I know that it's your business, but what are some of the key themes that you'd kind of realized and understood about, hang on, these are the boundaries that people might need to set, or this is the kind of mindset that people need in order to work full-time and not burn out, but also have free time for themselves and possibly even a side hustle if they want it?
Yeah, it's so important. I think it all comes down to, I guess, what your personal values are. And it's funny because a lot of people don't, or a lot of adults don't actually give themselves time to think about what it is that they really value in life. And I do a lot of that with my clients, is working through, actually, what is it that you value? Because once you understand what your core values are, from there, we can then build some boundaries in place to help you to really live in those values without kind of just having to please everyone. And particularly with teachers, often they're in that perfectionist mindset of people pleasing and all or nothing. And so something will come along and they'll be like, oh yeah, no, I can do that. I can help you. I can da 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 da. But once you've kind of got those values down pat, they then go, oh, actually, this is not really in line with my values. So it's easier for me to say no, or for me to put a boundary in place, because I can see that that's not necessarily where I'm wanting to go in my life. And I guess there's one quote, I guess, that I have come across early in my own personal development journey when I was kind of learning how to put boundaries in place and how to say no. And it was by Seth Godin, and it was in the Tools of Titans book by Tim Ferriss. And it said, I've got to think of it. If it doesn't align with the thing that is your mission, and you say yes, your mission is their mission.
Yeah.
So really, if someone's coming along and you're on your own little mission, and someone comes along and says, can you help me do this, or could you do that, and you say yes, you have now made a choice to make their mission your mission. And that's a choice, I guess, that you need to live with, and your mission is going to be diverted around that. And that really hit me, because I was like, oh my gosh, where am I going? Like, what do I actually want out of life? And how many things am I saying yes to that are other people's missions that are not my own? And that's just continually taking me away from the things that I'm wanting to achieve and the things that I want to feel in my daily life. So yeah, that was a big one for me. And I now share that with all my clients. I'm like, you got to hear this quote. This is a good one.
Yeah, I do like that. It's a great point, because I think people do have trouble saying no, but actually the way that's phrased and the way it hits home is like, oh, it's not just saying no, it's actually, it's me. It's throwing me off my path.
Exactly. And I think people don't necessarily recognize that, all those little, and I'm not saying to say no to everything by all means, but it's all those little daily choices that we make that kind of, steer our paths in different ways. And if we can do that intentionally, and if we can do that with aligned with what it is that we value and how we want our lives to look and feel and all those things, then we'll make those choices in line with those.
Yeah. So quick question on actually becoming a life coach. So once you've made the decision, how does that physically work? So you're sitting there going, hang on, I know, and I'm not sure, it might have actually happened like this. You're sitting there and you're like, right, life coach, I'm gonna do this. How do you go from it's up here to actually doing it, and then how do you go about getting your first client and starting to build your business from there?
Yeah, so mine was a little bit of a different journey in that, because I was on my own personal development journey, I actually bumped into a friend, Amelia Francis, at the gym one day, and I didn't know her, so we were just chatting about what we did, and she said, oh, I'm a life coach, and I was like, oh, I need you in my life, like this nice little giggle. And anyway, she was like, oh, okay, yeah, we can chat. And anyway, it ended up that I did a series with her and recognized the massive benefits that I got out of it. And in the process was talking about what I wanted to achieve with supporting teachers, and wasn't quite sure how to do it. She was like, oh, well, I think that you can specialize within life coaching for teachers. So why don't you think about something like that? And I was like, what? I was like, what? And I remember, like, we went for coffee, and I remember literally running home and getting on the phone to my dad and being like, Dad, I've got it. It's all, like, my life is sorted. Don't worry. Everything is totally sorted. And that was this moment where I was like, that was the missing piece. That was what I needed in order to, like, figure out how I was going to support these teachers. And my dad was like, okay, you need to calm down. I was like, no, I can't calm down. This is amazing. So yeah, basically that day I signed up to become a qualified life coach and went through the process. I studied with the Beautiful You Academy in Sydney, there in Melbourne. It was all done online. It is actually an unregulated industry, so there are a lot of life coaches out there that haven't studied through a big organization. But for me, I felt it was I learnt so much, and I wanted to make sure that I was qualified within the industry that I wanted to go in the ways that they did that. So that was the sort of the choice that I made. So I studied with them, and through that began to do some beta coaching effectively. So offering not only to people within the course, but to a couple of people in my own personal life who I knew would benefit from it. And from there, it just started to roll, and I started to pick up people and learned a lot from those first clients as to how I wanted to be as a life coach. And from there started to do a little bit of marketing, and it all kind of snowballed. So it's been a huge learning experience.
Yeah, brilliant. That does sound quite cool, actually. I love that kind of epiphany moment of like, this is it. I'm like, this is it.
It's true. It really was. I would have looked so ridiculous, but I needed to tell my dad.
I love that. It's amazing. In terms of specifically around the business and those actual first few people, is it something? Okay, so if someone was doing the same thing and they wanted clients, or they were in a position where they've got qualification, they might be struggling. Is it something that you literally reach out to friends and family and do the whole free thing, or just to get a bit of experience, a bit of knowledge, and then start rolling it out and say, okay, well, the first few people are free or a heavy discount, or how does that kind of logistically work?
Yeah, so I kind of made a choice that I wanted at the beginning to make sure that my, and I mean still to this day, but really wanted to hone in my coaching skills. So for me, the most important part was that I could be in situations where I could practice my skills, where I could hone them, where I could be the best life coach that I could possibly be. And as a result of that, I wanted to coach a range of different people so that I was kind of challenged in different ways, obviously. So the first 4 clients that I had were totally different. So I had a nurse, I had a male client who was just a corporate. I had a CrossFit coach and athlete, and I had a mum who was also a teacher, but more of a mum situation. And so very varied, but I effectively reached out to them and said, look, this is what I'm doing. This is what it can offer you. Would you be interested in partaking in something like this? And all of them were like, yeah, we'd love that. That sounds awesome. Why not? So I went through a coaching series with all of them. From there, 2 of them actually stayed on for an additional coaching series with me in a paid sense. So they were kind of my first paid clients. And then, the word of mouth kind of got out, and I started to approach different schools. I started to obviously start my Instagram account through colleagues that I had worked with over many years. Word just kind of got out. So that was how that started.
That's cool. So in terms of, you mentioned social there as well, and I'm very interested in terms of how different people use social in different ways to build their business. How did you specifically use it, and how much of a benefit would you say it brings to you? And what kind of other platforms might you use?
Yeah, so for me, social was a pretty big challenge. I prior to starting my business on Instagram, I really didn't use a lot of social media. Like, I would post an odd picture here and there of us wherever we were, just to stay in contact with people that we had traveled and lived with, etc., but it really wasn't anything. So it was a huge challenge for me to take what I had only known as Instagram and use it as a tool, or a tool in an industry to build up my business. And I remember for a long time, I felt super, super nervous about everything that I was sharing and questioning myself and thinking like, oh my gosh, people are going to think X, Y, Z. And my brain just went totally nuts. And that actually paralyzed me for a little while because I just couldn't get over the fact that I was, using a social media platform to build my business, because I think I probably had a really odd sense of what an influencer was, and I didn't want to be that person, and da 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 da. So I had a lot of stories going on in my own mind, and for me, starting to share the things that I had learned was a big starting point for me, because I was able to connect with teachers, and once I kind of gained that idea of, actually, I'm not trying to be someone that I'm not here. This is actually just my chance to share, which is what I want to do in my business, my chance to share the things that I have learned with other teachers. And so there's quite a big, they call it the Teachergram, and there's quite a big community of teachers on Instagram who share different ideas and support each other. So kind of getting into that and, connecting with other teachers and connecting with some of the messages that I was putting out there, and vice versa, was a big stepping stone at a beginning stage where I was like, oh, I don't want to, I'm overthinking everything. And from there, I recognized that I actually had no idea about Instagram or how it worked or anything along those lines. And I probably should learn a little bit more. So I ended up getting a coach, Monya Maya, and she specialized, she was a business coach, but she actually specialized in social media. So she helped me along this journey of being like, look, get out of your head. You are sharing what you know with your clients. It's a platform to be able to, connect and nurture relationships. And how lucky are you that there is a platform that you can do this on now? Before you would have to be walking up to schools and knocking on doors and all the rest of it. She was like, stop seeing it as something that's negative and see it as something that's really positive and a tool that you have in your toolkit of building your business. And that was a big moment. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah. I mean, that is what it is. And while it's still daunting to put myself out there regularly, it's something that, I know that even if there's one person out there that hears the message that I have for that day and that's what they needed to hear, then that for me is part of the process of what I'm wanting to achieve. So yeah, just a lot of learning, but a lot of learning.
Yep, it's the key to anything in my experience.
It's true.
But I agree, Instagram it can be a very, very scary and daunting place, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So I agree with you on that one. Yeah,
I know.
100%.
So I'm slowly working my way through it, but I'm loving it now, but it was a long road to get there.
Yeah, I can believe that. Are there any other platforms that you use, or are you very much a Instagrammer? Yeah,
look, just Instagram at the moment. Yeah. I have looked into looking at Pinterest, because obviously teachers love Pinterest, and that's something that I can foresee in the future is going to be super helpful for me and my content and everything that I'm sharing. I can recognize in myself that I'm someone that will commit to too many things and then be like, oh gosh, I'm in trouble here. So I'm just trying to get Instagram down pat, build a nice little community there and have a really supportive, engaged community. And then I'll have a look at the next step of Pinterest and a podcast as well.
Sounds good. One step at a time. I like it.
Yeah. No, exactly. Otherwise, I'll freak out and I won't do anything. So I've learned that from my own history.
No, I hear you. I'm with you on that one. So, just a couple of questions. One, and I did notice a book on your website, but I'll let you answer. Is there a particular book in your life that has maybe stood out or impacted you the most, or is one of your favorites?
Oh, now you're testing me. What did I put on my website?
It's okay. I'm not expecting you to have the same answer. It just made me think. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Oh gosh, I need to go back and read it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I never saw myself as a reader at all. And 2 years ago, I set myself the goal of reading 4 books in a year, which for me was massive because I had been that person that had a book that sat around for like years. And everyone in my family would be like, oh, she's still on the same book. I'm like, yes, I am. Yep, still there. So anyway, I set myself the goal and I talked to my sister about it and I said, oh, I'm going to read 4 books this year. And she was like, yeah, good luck. Like, yeah. Anyway, I got into a habit and I actually read 21 books that year. And wow. I was super proud of myself, which is probably why I can't remember which one I had on my website because I read so many of them. But I'm trying to think, probably the 2 that have had a really huge influence on my life are Mindset by Carol Dweck and Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. So both of those books really opened up my my own thinking and my own mind of actually putting yourself out there. And I probably read them at the most poignant time that I could have in starting my business and all those things and being in a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset and daring greatly and putting yourself in the arena and, you know, being courageous and being vulnerable. And all of those things at that point in time were things that I just needed to soak up and I really needed to implement because I was at a very vulnerable point in my own career. And without the words from both of those authors and educators, I probably would have, I would have been really overwhelmed and scared at what I was doing, but continually reminding myself of this is why I'm doing it. I'm in a growth mindset. I'm here to learn. I'm daring greatly. I'm daring greatly. I'm still daring greatly. Those were all things that really helped me at that point in time.
Well, it wasn't a test, but if it was, you'd passed. It was mindset, and it was. You didn't write about it. It was just in a picture, and I was just scrolling, and I noticed it, and I recognized it, and I was like, oh, okay. It's still on my reading list, which is really bad.
You have to. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. I mean, Carol Dweck's huge obviously in the education world anyway, because we often talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset in students. So I had actually read it before, but I hadn't ever applied it to myself as an adult and as a teacher. And I think that was where that change came in, was actually like, yeah, it's all good and well to promote that to the kids and to talk about it all day. But if you're not actually applying it to yourself, then there's not really a point in having it. So that was the change that happened there, I think.
Yeah, that's true, actually. And I've read plenty of book where I've read it, thought, oh, that's great, and then done nothing about it.
Yeah.
What's the point? Like, just read it and actually do something about
it. Exactly. Crazy.
Looking back now, looking back to kind of Michelle embarking on this journey of being a teacher, is there some advice you'd give yourself, or is there something you wish you'd have known at that point?
Good question. I think for me, some of the best advice that I've probably used quite frequently is just this idea of consistency, because I think I have seen the biggest improvements in all areas of my life when I have been consistent in my approach. And consistency for me was not in that all or nothing mindset, which I'd kind of been in for most of my life, of like doing something perfectly for however long and then, you know, not doing it perfectly and then thinking, oh my gosh, and then speaking unkindly to myself and then giving it all up. which that was my default, and I was really good at it. But kind of breaking away from that and looking at consistency in this approach of, and this is from Sam Laura Brown, she's been a mentor of mine for many years, but looking at consistency as a way of saying something happens more often than not. So kind of taking that pressure off myself for things to look or be done perfectly, and coming back to that thought of being consistent. So it's okay if I have a couple of days where I am not necessarily achieving a goal that I have set to achieve, because if I'm still overall doing it more often than not, I know in myself that the results are going to come. And that was a big learning curve for me, just to break away from that all or nothing mindset and go, actually, I'm going to take a consistent approach to what I'm doing in all the facets of my life. So yeah, I think that's something, is just that, be consistent in a way that's sustainable and feels good for me. And then the other part of this is probably just give yourself a break. Like I was so harsh on myself and I spoke so unkindly to myself. And if something didn't work out, I'd like bash myself up. Not horribly, but I would definitely be like, oh, you idiot, why did you do that? And that thought process is something that just builds up over time. And once you really hone in on that and you start to give yourself compassion and you start to speak kindly to yourself and give yourself a break, it's amazing how much can change, because you aren't almost lambasting yourself for doing something wrong, but you're actually seeing it as a learning opportunity, or you're saying to yourself, yeah, cool, like you gave it a go, good on you. It may not have worked, but well done for being courageous, and just that consistent changing of my inner talk to much more positive and a much more kind outlook has probably been a really huge game changer for me too.
Yeah, I think I need some of that, because I'm definitely one of those people that's just ridiculously harsh on themselves.
I know, I was too, and yeah, it took a long time to reprogram that, and I still have days that I'm like, whoa, I don't know where that came from. That was a bit mean, but certainly I focused on it for a long time, and it has made a massive difference.
Yeah, no, you probably don't want to be inside my head. Right, it's almost time for rapid fire, but I have one last question. If there's a message, you might have covered this a little bit anyways, but if there's a message you can give to any teacher that might be watching this or listening to this at any point in time, that may be feeling some of the things that you were going through when you first started and feeling slightly overwhelmed and like they might be on the road to burnout, is there something you want to say to them, or tell them? Or
I think there's many things that I could tell them. I could talk to them for days. Let's face it. But I think just the recognition that you are a person as well as being a teacher is a really important one, because teachers often have this idea of their entire identity being wound up in being a teacher. And from that, all those high expectations come into it. All of that guilt, all of that self-comparison comes into it all day. So really taking a step back and thinking, okay, I am a person. What do I need as a person to be my very best self today? Because if I'm filling that cup, if I'm feeding that plant, if I'm whatever all those different ways of thinking are, if I'm really looking after myself first, then that's going to flow on to my teaching. So really just thinking of yourself as a person, but then also that person is a fantastic teacher. And if you can feed one, it's going to flow over into the other as well.
That's actually very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's quite easy to forget that you do become what you are almost, and actually that is just take a step back. You are still you at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So true.
No, I like that. Okay, rapid fire, guys. For those that are listening, Don't be nervous, it's fine. For those that are watching either the replay or watching live, I'm gonna go to Michelle's view. I'm gonna just go into this. Guys, for those that are watching, like I said, or watching the replay, you can find Michelle on Instagram at michelle.c.weeks. Go and find her, go and check out her stuff, and go and give her a follow. Lots of advice. And yes, she is specifically for teachers, but I'm sure she's got a lot of wisdom to give anybody, and not just those that teach.
I do offer regular life coaching packages as well.
Excellent.
So they are there.
So anyone who just wants a life coach, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who could do with a life coach right now, go and check out Michelle's Instagram, and also check out our website if you want to see more about what she's about or anything like that. Then michelleweeks.com.au, because she is over the other side of the world. Over here. Yeah, so go and check that out as well. I will leave one of these. How do I do this? Does this work? There you go. We'll put them both up at the same time. Magic. Right, yeah. I click some buttons. Okay, rapid fire. Are you ready?
I'm ready, I think.
Okay. What's the first word that comes to your mind right now?
Fun.
What's your favourite pizza topping?
Meat lovers.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Mind reading, I think.
Me too. Everyone says flying.
Oh, flying probably would have been up there too. But mind reading, let's go with that.
Mind reading, I agree. What TV show are you watching right now?
Binge watching MasterChef Australia.
Okay.
Brilliant show.
Yeah, MasterChef is quite fun. I've never just watched it, but whenever it's on, it's quite.
Oh, the Aussie version is amazing.
Yeah,
definitely check it out.
Okay, no, not biased at all.
Not biased at all. No.
One person, dead or alive, you'd love to have dinner with.
I was born in South Africa, so I'm going to say Nelson Mandela.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What is the top thing on your bucket list?
I'd say probably to write a children's picture book would be up there.
That's very cool. I'm going to take that as an exclusive, because I know full well that you will do that one day. You heard it here first. You will. One thing that you're grateful for?
My family.
Lovely. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, pancakes for sure.
Yeah. That was really easy for you. Okay. iOS or Android?
iOS.
Excellent. Texting or talking?
Ooh. Can I say mini voice messaging? That's probably where I'm at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never sent one of those. I've had the odd one, but I'm like, well, this is weird.
Oh, I'm a terrible phone talker and I'm a terrible texter in replying. But if I can just know that I can get all my ideas out in one and send it, then I'm good to go.
All right, I might have to try that.
Yeah, good.
Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix.
TV or book?
Now, book, surprisingly.
Okay.
It used to be TV.
Yes. Okay, let's throw another one in there. What are you reading right now?
Right now, I always have two going. So I have I'm reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill as my sort of personal development one. And The Temptation of Gracie is the escapism somewhere in Italy cooking kind of one that I'm reading.
Love it.
Great.
Passenger or driver?
Driver.
And then cooking or baking?
Cooking. My baking's awful.
Okay, I won't ask for a cake then.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You made it to the end. That was easy. That was fun. I like it. Right, this is quite fun to play with. I'm getting very distracted. Here we are. We're back. There you go. Awesome. Right, that was a lot of fun. I hope you had some fun too.
Thank you. That was great. I love chatting. As you can tell, I could probably chat for ages. So I appreciate it.
That's cool. I very much enjoyed it. It was great to get to know about your story and where you're coming from and the stuff you had to go through being a teacher.
Correct. I know. Crazy world.
Anyway, thank you so much for being on. I do really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Barb. I really appreciate it. And keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. We all appreciate it.
Thank you. That's very kind. Guys, once again, go and find Michelle on Instagram. It's at michelle.c.weeks. And you can also check out her website, michelleweeks.com.au. And you can find all sorts of things over there. Please go and follow and check her out. Otherwise, thank you for joining for those that were live. Thank you for those watching the replay. And thank you to everybody who's listening on podcast whenever this goes up. Really, really do appreciate it. So I think that just about wraps it up. So for everybody else, this has been a lot of fun. I'll be back next week with a different guest, same time, same place. To stay up to date with any podcast news, go and check me out on @ProjectLifeAdmin, that one there, or projectlifeadmin.com, and you'll be able to stay up to date with all sorts of news and clips and things, and you'll know when the live has gone up and when the podcast is out, which should be tomorrow evening. Otherwise, Michelle, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.